This segment is brought to you in part by the Canadian Historical Arms Society, owners of the Genesee Range, the premier recreational sport and training facility in Western Canada. See us online at historical-arms.com.
The Quiet Professional, a podcast about law enforcement, security, justice, and politics. We are digging deeper on the issues and going where the information takes us with access to experts and authorities. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back. Nathan Romas with you. Today we are going to be talking about something kind of new, I guess, for this podcast. I haven't been on these topics before, but I got the experts here. We're going to talk about traumatic brain injuries, post-traumatic conditions, and potential treatments. So for this, I've got two guests. First up is Albert Jits Hobaugh II. Did I get the last name right, Albert?
That's correct, Hobaugh.
Awesome. Albert's journey began in 1985 with the 12th Special Forces Group and later with the 75th Ranger Regiment, and continued through decades of public service as a paramedic, special agent, and tactical operator with the ATF. He helped respond to the 9/11 terror attacks, the Beltway sniper case, and even worked behind the scenes during the 2002 Winter Olympics. After a career-ending injury in 2018, Albert retired with honors, but this didn't stop his mission. Today, Albert channels his unmatched experience into serving communities and supporting fellow veterans through being a mentor for the Three Rangers Foundation. And he's even an author, so he's got lots going on. Second guest is Matt Domyancic. He's been on the show a few times. Matt is a medically retired police officer who worked across several disciplines while in his career. This included patrol, SWAT, training sections, and peer support. Matt has his MS in forensic science, an MS in sports psychology, and a master's in pastoral theology. He is now a one-man nonprofit police chaplain, peer support, and wellness and resiliency advocate for first responders and veterans. You can find Matt's work and mission at his website, tacticalchaplain.com. I'll get all those links and more up in the episode description so people can find all your guys' work. So welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. Glad to be here.
Man, I think it's going to be great. Matt, obviously, I've saying you've been on the show a few times. I always enjoy having you back on here because it's a great discussion. And Albert, this is your first time on the show. We were introduced through a prior guest I had, so some of the Rangers guys. It was an episode about leadership, and they're like, you got to talk to Albert. He's got an amazing story. Well, amazing. You've been through a lot. Obviously, we're going to talk about some of the effects of that today. But yeah, they were raving about you. So I'm happy to get you in here.
Well, I appreciate you having me. Yeah, that was Fred Flybacker.
Yeah.
One of the flank holders for the 2nd Ranger Battalion, one of the first thereafter it became a regiment. And yeah, he's a great guy. He's been mentoring me through some stuff. Actually, you know what? He sent me a box of screenplays because I'm also writing a screenplay.
Oh, wow.
And he said, and inside the screenplay, it's a bunch of old screenplays that are very, very popular movies. And one of them is labeled The Platoon. And it's the original screenplay for Platoon before they even changed it to Platoon.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it's pretty
Super
awesome.
cool.
And yeah, it's got the studio markings on it and everything, but I'll digress.
Man, well, keep that in good condition. It might be worth something one day.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're going to kind of start, as we were saying just before we fired this up, talking about around your retirement. So you sustained an injury in 2018. Obviously, your career and reading through your first of 3 books, you've been through quite a bit. But maybe we'll start around 2018 and we'll talk about the injury you sustained and go from there. So if you could tell us about that experience.
So the injury is actually in 2016. I think the book can be a little confusing on that, but February of 2016, I had already been leading up to having some complications at the firing range, and I had had a number of concussions throughout my career, so I was very susceptible to concussions. I was that guy that when you went to the firing range and you shot your M4 all day and you shot the shotgun, especially when I shot the shotgun when it rocked my head. Uh, I would drive away and I would be that guy at the stoplight that would sit there when it turned green for 30 seconds. My response time was horrible. And so in 2016, U.S. Marshals had a guy locked down in the attic, and he went up into that attic with a weapon. And this was in Salinas, California. And they had called in SOG because this guy had a long gun of some sort up there in the attic with him that he climbed up there with. And so the SOG unit or the SOG element for the U.S. Marshals responded. They didn't have explosive breaching capability at that time, and my team did. And so they activated ATF SRT out of Los Angeles, which was my team, Team 4, and we responded to it. And in the process of working the problem, we ended up utilizing some explosive breaching in the attic area in the garage. And so we put some explosive breaches across. It was a high attic with some explosive breaches across, breaching charges across that upper part of the attic, sheetrock up there. And we did a piggyback and we moved 3 charges at the same time, pretty much. When we did that, we had parked our Bearcat across the street to keep the Bearcat, to keep the blast pressure from blowing out the windows on the houses across the street. And what happened was the blast pressure bounced off of the Bearcat and came back towards us. And there was about a 5-foot fence I was standing behind. My team behind me got down on their knees. I was number 1 in the stack, and my mindset was focused on covering my breacher because everybody else was out of the way of the blast, and I wanted to make sure that my breacher had some type of lethal weapon coverage in the event that right before he blew that blast, that the suspect came running around the corner. I didn't want my breacher to get surprised. He was focused on breaching. And so I was lethal cover for him, and I was above that fence. I had body armor on. I had a helmet, ear protection, peltors, all that stuff. But when that blast pressure bounced off that Bearcat and blew the windows out to the house to the left of me, right there in that garage, I know they're brand new storm windows. I remember the chalk markings on them, and blew those windows out, and it thumped me pretty good. I felt it. I felt it. Just kind of thumped me in the chest and go through my head, and I seemed to be fine. It wasn't that big of a deal to me. And it wasn't that much of pressure. It did knock the bird's nest down on the roof on my team back there, but they all had their helmets on. Everything was good. So we moved forward after the breaching. We moved into the garage. We started locking down our angles and everything, and starting to secure the area, especially the fatal funnels of fire coming out of the man wall that was actually facing the street instead of the ground. So we had some deep flare situations up there, but we had blown it all away. And we ended up putting a canine up there to search for the guy because we didn't get a response from him when we were calling him. We didn't know if the guy got knocked out or what. So we're still working the problem. And we put our canine up there, and I'm letting our canine handler know where that dog is from my position. Me and another U.S. Marshal, a SOG guy, are up on top of we climbed up on top of a freezer. My guys were elevated, but they weren't elevated enough to see the bottom of the rafters. The bottom of the attic area up there and that insulation. They weren't able to see that from their point of view, and so we were back to back covering 360 or the 270 we needed to cover, and I was calling out where the canine was. Canine was being directed by the handler. I started losing my ability to judge distance with the canine. So I started counting rafters because I knew how far rafters were apart approximately and giving direction that way. But I noticed I started losing a little bit of my ability to comprehend what was going on in the situation and to calculate, do my calculations and judgments. And so eventually we all ended up in the attic, and one of my partners ended up there, and it was almost L shaped that they had covered. There was some deep clear situations up there with a bunch of insulation, big huge roll of insulation. And all I was thinking was there could be a bad guy behind that insulation. And on my side, I only had one man up in the attic. It was hard, they used the ladder on the other side to put good fortune team up there. But it was an L shaped situation. And really, they probably could have covered anything that would come around that insulation on him from the L shape. But my brain wasn't thinking properly. I was concussed already. And I decided I was going to climb up there. So there was an easy way for me to climb up there. It wasn't real easy, but to me it was. I was thinking so. Now I'm weighing 300 pounds because I'm 225 solid at the time, pretty muscular. And I got about 75 pounds of kid on. And they push the freezer over there, and I go to climb up, and I go to put my foot on a hanger on the wall, step up. And one of the guys down below says, "Hey man, don't step on that, because if you step on that, your foot's going to go through the wall." I'm like, "Yeah, copy that." And he puts his hand up for me to step in. Well, my brain doesn't register it, and I step on it anyway. And when I step on it and I try to press up into that attic, I got a shoulder injury from Ranger Battalion. And when I press up into that attic, my right foot goes through the insulation. My right shoulder gives out. I drop down. I hit the beam right here. So I dropped about from waist level down, just my whole 300 pounds just dropped pretty much. And I hit my face right here and it knocked me out. I didn't realize I was knocked out. I had amnesia when I came to about 45 seconds to a minute and a half later. I do remember my partner trying to help me up. And I refused. I just ignored him because I didn't know what was going on. And I finally came to. My team didn't know I got knocked out. I continued to work the problem, but it was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life because of I had an immediate onset of diabetes insipidus. So you have to urinate immediately really bad, like a racehorse. That happened.
Right there, like in the attic.
I was in the attic, laying up on top of the attic after my partner finally pulled me up there. And I was laying there taking a breather for a second, and then I continued to help the service. But that's what I said was the hardest thing I ever did, was continuing that mission, getting my body to move and searching that attic. My muscles didn't want to move. I was exhausted. I was confused. We ended up ending the problem and solving the problem and going ahead and conducting after action review afterwards. I was sitting in my Suburban at the time and talking to my wife on the phone. It was about 4:30 in the morning now when we ended that problem about 2 hours later. And I was sitting there and they were calling me on my pale tours to come to the after action review. And I'm never late to a meeting. I've never been late to a meeting. I've never held up the team. I'm solid that way. And they were calling me to the meeting, and they called me like 3 times. But the last time they called me, I finally heard them. It took about a minute and a half for my brain to realize they were trying, or more, my brain to realize that they were even calling me. I showed up in the meeting. They were like, "Hey, dude, where you been?" And I was like, "Hey, I got your call and I came." They're like, "We've been trying to get hold of you for like 5 minutes." And I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't hear anything, man. I had my radio on and everything." Later on, after I left there, my head was hurting when I flew out. I was a little worried about my head exploding on the aircraft and the pressure. And then when I got home, I had some complications from that point forward that led me to realize about a month later that I had a brain injury when I went to run across the street to meet a stoplight. The light was yellow and I ran across the street to go arrest the guy. A real simple operation we had going. The guy was in the courthouse. So, and my head just started pounding. I ended up in the emergency room. They told me that they gave me some mannitol to decrease the swelling in my brain, and they told me that I had a really bad concussion, and that ended my career. For about 2 years, I tried healing. I went through a lot of treatment, and I had some awesome neurological assistants and everything. About 8 different specialists working with me.
Wow.
ATF was awesome with me. But I was on the injured reserve, as you would say, and for 2 years, and then they gave me a medical retirement with 18 years on.
Wow. So when you go through all that, obviously you realize there's something in the moment, but are you thinking like I need to get this checked out, or like you said, you continued to do some operations and stuff like after that day, you just kind of push through and maybe as they say, most guys tend to do, they don't really think about the health side of things right away. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
I had 3 operations coming up over the month. I was preparing for also, along with I had just come out of an 18-month undercover operation where I was case agent and the undercover operator. And I had established a HIDA task force, and I was working with 7 different agencies. And we'll talk about that later, but maybe that's for another episode. We ended up arresting 54 of the most violent offenders on the southeast side of Portland, all prison gang members, out of the 100 of them that I targeted initially in the 18-month period. And so I was focused on the prosecution aspect of all that. Had a guy that was pending a death row case. He ended up on death row for a little bit, and then his appeal, they removed him from death row. But we put him away for 54 years on a murder and some other stuff. Actually, on mine, it was the attempted murder of my informant. But he had shot him in the gut like twice, broke his back, busted his skull. But later, I cultivated him, and he later died of his injuries after we arrested all these guys 18 months later. He also, I'll digress on that. I had 3 other operations. One in Los Angeles. We were working gang members there. We had to go in and do a search warrant on the house. I think we had 18 gang members in that house. And that was the last one I did when I realized that I might have a problem. The first time I went, we flew a week later. We flew to Phoenix, Arizona, to arrest a bunch of Native American gangs on an Indian reservation that had targeted a police officer. Commenced flash their lights at him, got him pulled over. Then they took an AK-47, got out, and executed him.
Jeez.
So we went. ATF worked that up, and we went and hit 4 houses, I believe, in that operation. And when I went to the airport, come back from that operation, my head was pounding again. And I never buy like Motrin at the airport or anything, but I needed it this time. I thought my head was going to explode. And then I went home and worked out.
Yeah.
And my head almost exploded on me there. And then 2 more operations. And finally, I realized I had a problem.
So you notice there's like creeping effects. Stuff's kind of like building up over time. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'm also a firearms instructor and simulations instructor, and I was doing some training. And I realized that the guys that I was praising for their very fast movement and reactionary time, the reason the guys were looking at me when I was praising them, it was like because they really weren't moving that hard and fast at that point in time.
Okay.
But to me, my brain, space-time continuum was not working for me. Yeah. And then we had a going away ceremony, and when everybody clapped, it took me about 30 seconds to clap. So everybody was done clapping, and then I was like, looking around and like, what am I doing? But then I ran across the street, my head blew up on me, and that was it.
I gotta jump to Matt here. Have you ever experienced this? Like because you work with a ton of veterans, tons of law enforcement. Do you hear these kind of things when it comes to like CTE or people talk about brain injuries? Have you had any experience with that?
Yeah, so personally, I have not, but tons of veterans and more cops than people realize end up with TBI. Motor cops get it. They say it's not if, it's when a motor cop's going to get in an accident. Other cops that get in motor vehicle accidents, or even like when you're rolling up on a scene, you take your seatbelt off, right, to get out and run, or at least that's what you used to do. You wouldn't keep it on. And then if somebody pops out and you slam the brakes real quick, somebody hits the windshield.
Yeah.
So motor vehicle, motors, SWAT guys, and also in the riots, at least in the States, the BLM riots, lots of cops got hit with pipes, bricks, rocks, full cans filled with whatever. And you're seeing it now in Los Angeles. The federal agents are getting hammered. And at least in the police law enforcement world, it takes forever because it's not such a clean diagnosis. And then you do not get high speed doctors, and people wait forever, and they may or may not get a medical retirement. And if I could just throw out there some things that I would like people to be aware of that may potentially help. There's something called MERT, MERT. And if people look up wave neuroscience, if you have TRICARE, so if you're active duty military or retired military in the US, they cover it. And it's an individualized version of transcranial magnetic stimulation. So they do an EEG on your brain waves, and then they dial in whatever the frequencies are, whatever that is. And I've known a lot of military special ops, CIA people. I got to do it not for TBI, but it helped my insomnia. So non-pharmaceutical, non-invasive, MERT, wave neuroscience. Also, Dr. Mark Gordon. If you look up Dr. Mark Gordon, and there's a documentary called Quiet Explosions, and it's about TBI. They do lab work on inflammation in the body, and he has supplements and or does hormone replacement, whether it's peptides, growth hormone, testosterone replacement therapy. And people with TBI get tremendous benefits because, as I understand it, TBI can cause brain inflammation and lower your hormones. So that's something else a lot of people with TBI may not be aware of, and work comp's not going to be like, let's get you some blood work to maybe put you on hormone replacement therapy. Dr. Thomas Seeger is, one of the world's experts in cold therapy. He's one of the owners of Morozco. That's the cold plunge that, like Joe Rogan and celebrities use.
Yeah.
He's a really smart guy, and they're getting data and feedback on cold plunge, red light, and sauna for PTSD and TBI. And there's a guy named Rich Ganley, Positive Impact Alliance, out of Arizona, that installs red light therapy, sauna, cold plunge with a meditation app and a vagus nerve stimulator at police and fire departments. And it helps with detox and firefighters from chemicals, and it's helping people with their PTSD as well. So cold plunge, red light, meditation, obviously like Albert does, a lot of exercise. And if you have access to a sensory deprivation float tank or a professional that does neurofeedback, these are all things that I think a lot of cops, at least, are just not aware of.
Yeah.
And their workers' compensation or the federal agencies, I'm sure it's not much different from what I heard. The federal agencies aren't going to be like, hey, let's think about hormone replacement, MERT, cold plunge, sauna, red light therapy, meditation.
Yeah.
Right? Meditation, exercise, all of these things that help the brain. I wish there was more awareness for people that are suffering.
I think one of the things that is good about what you're bringing up too is many of those things you can do on your own, right? Like meditation, like you can get books on that. You can see things on YouTube, exercise. There are a lot of things people can start to do. And then if you want to get into those other treatments and topics, I mean, there are people out there that can help you. There are ways to get into it, but a lot of it is available to you just at home. Albert, for you, and something that Matt kind of brought up is, were you able to connect this back to that 2016 event, or was there kind of trouble with doing that? Like, did you get kind of pushback from the agency or the medical side of it going, well, how do you know that caused it?
Actually, no. I did with workers' compensation. Workers' compensation became a problem towards the end. It kind of dropped me off at a spur moment. And so we had some financial issues with that. And until I got my medical retirement and whatnot. So I had to live off my thrift savings plan for a little bit and kind of wipe that out. But for me, in my situation, I think a lot of officers are involved in this because you see a lot of officers that develop PTSD, and you can get it from burnout and all that. But for me, being a paramedic in Oklahoma City, I was a paramedic leading up to the Oklahoma City bombing. I wasn't a paramedic in the bombing, but I was a medic with the Special Forces unit at that time, with the Reserve Special Forces unit, and I did go down and work that bombing on the reserve end. But I didn't go down there until about 18 hours later. But what I see is I had a lot of trauma as a child, from recreational, from my childhood, from my lifestyle, from my family situation, everything. I had a lot of trauma. I was having trauma. Long concussive head impacts, concussive head impacts, repetitive head injuries, long concussive from the age of from the 5th grade on. Actually, 4th grade, I think, is the first time. And I motocross, so shook my brain up there. That didn't help. Played some sports as a younger kid, but my family situation didn't allow me to play it in high school. But I did motocross and ride dirt bike, and got into a lot of fights, things like that. Just trauma to the head, whether it's through physical abuse or whether it's through sports, whether it's through explosive breaching, whether it's through low explosive weapons. No matter what type of trauma you got to the head, it's still trauma to the head. It's still shaking that brain up. It's still rocking those neurons. And eventually, the brain just can't handle the psychological pressure that you're dealing with as a police officer, as a medic, as an undercover agent, as a firefighter, as a SWAT operator. Everything starts to build up, and you're able to manage it in the back of your head, per se. But then it gets to a point where you have so much damage, accumulative damage, over the years. So for me, we were looking at 30 years of damage, and accumulative damage over the years, to the point to where you go shoot a shotgun 15 times and your head's rocked for a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're at that point, you're stressed out because, if you talk to your agency about it and they decide that, you're not functionable anymore now, you lose your 1811 series, they put you in a different position. You don't have that AUO pay or that 125% differential. You're living shoestring to shoestring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the pressure builds up and you can't manage, because of the trauma in your brain. You cannot manage the stress that you normally manage. So then the stress starts to take over, and that's when the PTSD comes in. My PTSD was there at a certain level of the complex PTSD, but the stuff that I dealt with that on the level of what a law enforcement officer deals with on the street, and what an agent deals with his cases and everything, and the stuff that he has to see and deal with and take responsibility for, that level of PTSD. See, now my brain has slipped what I was going to say, but it'll come back.
Just talking about the PTSD. Go ahead, Matt. I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, there's just a couple other things I wanted to mention that may not be on everybody's radar. But a couple months ago, I sat down with a nonprofit for veterans, and now they're branching out for first responders, called the Sabbath Foundation, out of Los Angeles, and they're paying for stem cell treatment for veterans and first responders. And apparently there's some type of stem cell that could be beneficial for TBI. I also want to say, and I'm not the expert on this, but whether it's microdosing or going on a retreat, there's a lot of veterans. Now, the police can't touch this because of the legal status, but people are saying that the psychedelics are helping TBI. Now, in the States, ketamine-assisted therapy is legal, and something I'd like to throw out in general, because I have talked to police psychologists, fire psychologists, peer support conferences. A lot of them don't want to touch ketamine-assisted therapy, which is legal, or psychedelics. But here's the problem. Cops and firefighters are hearing ex-Navy SEAL, ex-Green Beret, ex-Army Ranger, went south of the border and cured their PTSD with one of these psychedelics.
Yeah.
So cops and firefighters are doing psychedelics on their own because they're desperate for relief. But you have to understand the research and also my experience in meeting people. People that do psychedelics in collaboration with therapy and support group work have lasting benefits because you still have to process the PTSD. The psychedelic may allow these things that have been stuffed, disassociated, and compartmentalized from childhood, combat, and your experience in law enforcement or as a first responder. It comes up, but you still got to chew on it and figure out what's the lesson that I can now integrate into my life story and move forward. So you still have to do therapy and or support work with processing, digesting these uncomfortable memories and feelings. And there's a lot of people that are just doing the psychedelics without the therapy. And then a year later, they're the shaman, they're the guru, they're the life coach. And let me tell you, like, if your stepfather sodomized you when you were a kid, your dad beat your ass, he was an alcoholic, left you when you were 10, you had to shoot a kid in Afghanistan because they had an IED, and then you've seen so many dead bodies as a cop or a firefighter, you can't go do one trip on psychedelics and then a year later be holding space for other people doing psychedelics. And I've seen these people that are using psychedelics as another form of escape, even though they're beautiful. If you're doing your therapy, your support work, your lifestyle changes around it ongoing. Like I like to say, like if you're not a genetic freak and you don't have abs genetically, it's going to take dial in nutrition, sleep, stress management, and your workout to get abs. And once you get those abs, you can't stop going to the gym and start staying up late and not sleeping and start eating McDonald's and keep your abs. So psychedelics can be a beautiful tool, as I understand it, for TBI and especially PTSD, if it's supported with a therapeutic and other supportive community relationships and lifestyle habits over the long haul.
I actually did Ibogaine, and that's what helped me. But then there's the integration process afterward that I'll touch on, which works for me, but it's not the same as what everybody's doing. It's not the norm, but I'm gonna like touch on that here in a minute.
Yeah, no, go ahead. You can talk about it. I was just going to say, I think it's a good point that Matt was making. Just it's the totality of it, right? We'll see people take steroids and they just take the steroids. It's like, oh, you got to go to the gym when you take that. Otherwise, you're just getting fat. You're not getting big. So it's like you still have to put in work. There's no magic pill. There's no magic formula or whatever that you're just going to take and that's it. So yeah, no, but I'm curious about your experience here with Ibogaine.
Yeah, I'll be real quick with this. I remember what I was going to say now. Officers, federal agents, people that in their department is like, if you do psychedelics, then you'll never get a job here. You do psychedelics, you're going to lose your security clearance. Things like that. Things like Ibogaine, which helped me tremendously. Modalities of treatment like that are not available because until you get out. Because if you do try to use it, your agency is going to can you. So there needs to be some administrative changes need to be made. They need to realize that this works, and they need to realize that the agencies need to take a chance on some of these modalities, especially Ibogaine, I would say, and allow these officers to heal. Because if you don't have brain injury, that's completely debilitating your ability to get out there and perform your job. And you're just dealing with PTSD. You can go do Ibogaine and come back as a one-trick pony. You don't have to do it. You don't do it again. Nobody wants to do it again. It's very hard.
Yeah.
It's not a party drug for sure. You're not going to find anybody out there saying, "Hey, man, you got some Ibogaine." It ain't going to happen. So that's the safe thing about it. And the other thing is you got officers, you got a lot of experience. They're very good officers that they get their head torqued up a little bit just because their brain can't handle it anymore, all the pressure that they've been under, and they've seen some horrible stuff. But if they can go do Ibogaine and be healed from that and have an integration process that is not associated with any type of illegal narcotics or any type of medication or any type of psychedelics down the road, then it's a wholesome integration process. Then you got an officer with a lot of experience that you don't want to lose to a medical retirement or to a suicide because he can't reach out for help.
Yes.
And so we got a lot of officers that have a lot of experience that we're losing to suicide right now. And one of the reasons is because of the socioeconomic or social situation that they've been going through, especially the last 4 years or more. These officers have had, I got into a critical incident and I felt a sense of abandonment from the U.S. Attorney's Office on it, and I can talk about that later. But these officers get a sense of administrative abandonment. It's worse than the incident itself. And when they feel like they're in the corner by themselves, what you start to feel like is, man, you're locked in a room with no windows and no door, and you can't find your way out. And there's nobody in there to help you, and everybody's abandoning you. And the only way you're gonna find a door and window and find your way out of there instead of blowing your brains out is get the proper help. And if you can't reach out,
Can I make a couple points?
yeah,
I don't want to cut you off, but there's a couple points.
go ahead.
One, you're talking about something that Mark Bouchard, who has a must-read book for law enforcement called Setting My Sights on Stigma, Thoughts from an Injured Mind. And he talks about organizational betrayal and calls it sanctuary trauma. That's so real, whether it's your chain of command, city council, the county board of execs, the chief of police, or the sheriff. With the suicide issue and the mental health issues, and when you were talking about Ibogaine, ketamine-assisted therapy is legal in the U.S., and there are first responders that are doing it. However, there's companies out there that are capitalizing on ketamine. So they'll send you troches, little pills to do at home with no therapy. And then you can go to clinics where they hook you up to an IV with 10 other people. You trip. There's no doctor, psychologist, therapist to help you process what comes up. So I do want to put out there, especially because I don't know what ketamine does for TBI, but there's the potential it may help. But PTSD and suicidal ideation, ketamine really, really helps with that. And they discovered that ketamine helps with that because they usually use it in surgeries for anesthesia. And say somebody got a knee surgery that had clinical resistant depression, treatment resistant depression, or were suicidal, and they get a surgery where they use ketamine. They tell the doc, hey, man, I don't want to kill myself anymore. I actually feel good. So ketamine can help with the suicide, with the depression and the PTSD. But I suggest, and I would wish more mental health professionals and peer support teams and conferences would talk about it in the context of ongoing therapy and doing the ketamine with a therapist that's trained to handle this type of unconscious and sometimes very symbolic stuff that comes up, or the traumatic memories. So I don't know ketamine for TBI, but there is the potential for ketamine-assisted therapy to help first responders, and it's legal and it shouldn't threaten your employment.
Yes, that's a great point.
One thing I'll add on that real quick, and you know what, I would say that goes for like the physical skills. Like if somebody's selling you a product or they're selling you some consultation, if it's just like a one-off, you have to be wary of that. Like, is there any follow-up? Is there any check-ins? Is there anything beyond this one session we're doing? Because if there's not, then people should seriously question that, especially when it comes to something as serious as your mental health. But we see it even in like tactics and stuff. It's like, I'm going to come and show you the latest, greatest move or whatever we're doing now. And, but there's no follow up like, hey, how did it work? Or, hey, do we got some more data that we can incorporate into this? Is it still working? Have the bad guys figured it out? That type of stuff.
That evaluation process.
Yeah.
There's a lack in the evaluation process because if it didn't work or you got problems with it, then you take that evaluation and you reanalyze, design, develop, and re-implement your situation, in a more effective way. But if you don't have that evaluation, you don't get a chance to do that. But what I can say about the MERT is I was going to go to Dallas to do the MERT. I had an organization that was going to pay for it for me, and as a veteran, and I also was going to get some assistance from a organization that's specific law enforcement oriented. If I remember it, I'll tell you. But I had this Obligating opportunity pop up, and the University of Texas put me in a special operations study that they did, similar to the one that Stanford did. And they have 40 special operators that they were going to do Obligating with, and TBI and PTSD. Now, real quick, like we went down there, we were working with the University of Texas, and they partnered with the Mission Within, and the Mission Within was 5-star situation. I mean, they were awesome on the preparation, on the actual execution, and the follow up. And I continue even today, once a week, to do integration calls with my Mission Within integration group, and we are tight. I mean, we talk every day on Signal, and we are making this thing work. Now, I went and did the Ibogaine, and I've never done psychedelics before in my life. I went down there, they prepared me for it. The next night, we fasted for it and all that, and then the next night, we did the Ibogaine. Later on, when we do another session on here, I'll get into details on how that went, because it's incredible the way the Mission Within runs that program. But I had my psychedelic trip, and the next morning I came around from it. And I didn't think it worked. I thought that I manipulated it. And I was really upset. I thought I blew the whole thing. I manipulated this psychedelic trip and wouldn't work for me, blah, blah, blah. But then I talked to one of the counselors there, and they were like, hey, man, our proctor, really a proctor for us. And I was like, hey, man, I don't think this thing works. And he's like, well, you're smiling, and I haven't seen you smile before. And I was like, oh, yeah, is that right? And they're like, yeah, why don't you go downstairs and just, hold your space while everybody else is getting up. And Dr. I forget his name right now, but the doctor will be in. He's a neurologist that is assigned there. I'm sorry. He's the cardiologist that's assigned there, and we'll get into that later on. But and he's the doctor of the entire program. He's the medical director of the program, I believe. But I saw him. He came in and he told me, he goes, "You seem to be doing pretty good." And I said, "Well, I don't feel like that. It was effective. I think I manipulated it." He goes, "Why?" I said, "Because nothing happened for like 2 hours, and then I had my trip, and then I kind of manipulated that whole trip with my own mind and this and that." And he goes, "I don't think so." He goes, "Those 2 hours." He goes, "It was working on your brain for those 2 hours. Then you had your trip, and believe me, it worked." And he goes, "Now you just need to do your integration process." I was like, "All right, Doc." Later on, I started really feeling much better about it. And the rest of the guys, they did the 5-MeO DMT. I didn't get to do it afterwards because I was in the research study. But the Ibogaine itself worked for me. And then I came home and I established my own integration process. I really wasn't into doing yoga, meditation, things like that. I didn't want to open my mind up to entities, that, I'm a Christian. I'm Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. But I tell you, right, this Ibogaine process helped me to get closer to Jesus, helped me to get closer to my family, gave me the ability to love, gave me the ability to accept love. And when I came home, I started on my integration process, and I'm going to go through it right now, real quick.
Hmm.
I wake up in the morning, and I thank Jesus Christ for my waking up in the morning. I have my gratitudes, and then first thing I do, because there's a book I just read, it's right up here, called "Switch Your Brain On," and my VA counselor told me about that book, and I checked it out, and it's awesome. It falls right in line with what I do, my integration process. It's like my integration process on steroids. And there's a presentation that I give on achieving your dreams, and that book is the foundation of what I give in my presentation. So I recommend people pick that book up. It is a Christian-based book, but it is a Christian-based integration process, and you don't even need to go through IBA to do it. It's 21-day cleansing for your brain and to help reset your brain, switch your brain back on, and it's all Christian-based. So a lot of people are looking for a Christian-based integration program that are really not one out there. I'm going to be developing one. But from what I do and has worked for me is I wake up in the morning and I pray to Jesus Christ first thing in the morning. I say my prayers. I put my armor of God on Him. I ask Him to guide me, protect me, direct me, light that path for me that I may walk it. Let me give all my worries to Him. And when I do that, I go through my day worry free. And all I do is enjoy the glory of God throughout the day. And on top of that, the glory of my relationship with everybody like y'all when I'm talking to you right now. On top of that, the next thing I do is I read my Bible. I fill my mind with the Word of God, and I'll do spontaneous reading. I'll do reading that I'm planning. A lot of times I find that when I do spontaneous reading, the Word of God, the Holy Spirit will speak to me through that Bible. So many times that I'll have something I'm dealing with in my life. I'll open up that Bible and there's the answer. Or I'll have a question. I'll open my Bible up and there is the answer. So the Word of God, there's a living, breathing Bible right here. And the living, breathing Word of God, you know, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh, and the Word, became flesh. And that's Jesus Christ. Was in the beginning, will be in the end, and is here now. Anyways, there's my brain slipping on me again.
Can I throw in a couple things then? Oh, go ahead.
That integration process, those first 2 hours in the day, filling your brain up with positive things, filling your brain up with God, who we were created to have a relationship with. You fill your brain up with that, you can do whatever you want the rest of the day. But in the very beginning of the day, your brain is creating new neural pathways.
Yeah.
And if you don't link those neural pathways properly or train them properly, you're gonna have the same problem. So, anyways, that's my integration process. I want to go into it later on with you at a higher level. Matt, go ahead.
I'm going to bang through a couple of things because I know Nathan might have to go soon. But Albert, I'd love to put you in touch with the Cardiff Brain Performance Center, which is connected to Wave Neuroscience. And there's some nonprofits that may pay you to come stay in Encinitas for 6 weeks and do the MERT. And the second benefit would be that I'd get to hang out with you because that's about an hour.
Yeah, man.
So let's talk about that offline.
Let's do that.
You brought up something else. This is important about psychedelics, and we wouldn't be able to go down a deep rabbit hole, but spiritual experience and mystical experiences are part of the research of psychedelics going back to the 50s and 60s. And a lot of times, very generically speaking, you may have been raised religious in whatever tradition and its rules of morality. The medications may give you an experience of unconditional love and unity and connection to other people, which can be affiliated with theology. So if there are Christians out there that are hesitant about this, they can contact me, and I'm not pushing anything on anyone, but there's a number of books that integrate theology, clinical psychology, and the science of psychedelics. And they explain what the spiritual experience is and the challenges of people that want to come back to church and God after psychedelics, but then you may have a hard time finding a church or clergy that's going to be accepting that you did MDMA or Bufo or ayahuasca. But there are theologians and people out there that walk through this. And And there's also something called interspirituality. And again, I don't push anything on anyone. And what interspirituality is, if somebody wants to explore it, is you say you're a Christian and somebody teaches you transcendental meditation, Vipassana Buddhist meditation, you go to a yoga class. It's these are, again, you'd have to read about it, but it'd be like, hey, I'm an Olympic lifter and I'm going to stay an Olympic lifter. But the strongman people use kegs for GPP, general physical preparation.
Mhm.
I'm going to stay a power lifter, but integrate some strongman. So it is possible, depending on where you are and in your faith or explore your theology, to get exposure to meditation or yoga, but to have the intentions to grow closer to God or Christ as you understand it. But these are all like really deep rabbit holes.
Yeah, and I'm just talking about me. I'm not pushing on anybody on anything. I'm not pushing anything on anybody. But this is what worked for me, and the reason I want to put it out there is because I know a lot of guys that went through it. I know a guy that went through it. He was there with me. He went through it. He didn't do any integration. He ended up back there a year later. Okay, and now he's doing integration. It's working for him. But I know a lot of people that go through it and they're seeking other psychedelics. They aren't satisfied yet.
They're doing what on psychedelics?
They're
I didn't hear the
seeking other psychedelics. They're trying to go deeper, get a better, stronger healing, this and that. They still have something that they're a void that they're trying to fill, or they feel like they still need more. Right? For me, it was a one-trick pony. It dealt with my it dealt with my PTSD issues, and it gave me space, and I've been holding that space. I don't need any more psychedelics. I use the word of God, and it works for me. Now, hey, Jesus Christ calls whoever he calls. You know what I mean? They'll have the ears to hear and the eyes to see, or they won't. That's between them and their Lord and their Maker or whatever. But for me, this process works. And I know that there are people out there that go through treatment that want a Christian based process based on, I know the history of yoga. I know where it comes from. Personally myself and just me. I don't want anything to do with it. So I'll go stretch all day long, but I'm not going to be doing poses to some deity. It's not going to happen on my end. And I'm a Christian. I'm going to speak up about it boldly, and because there are other people out there that need this help and want this help. They want to hear what I have to say. Everybody else don't want to hear what I got to say, but they can just move on down the road. So, yeah, that's what I'm serious. That's the way I am about it.
It's good.
I love your passion.
I love you, brother, but if you don't want to hear what I tell people, I love you, brother, but if you don't want to hear what I say, just snap.
Albert, you said some important things though, like you have a VA counselor, you have other support system, you're doing all of your spiritual practice. And this is what I do see as well, is guys that don't do any of that. They don't work on their relationships. They don't have a counselor. They don't do whatever their prayer.
I have a story on that.
And they keep doing retreats, and they bring their buddies on retreats, and then they start tripping on their own too. And it really could be another form of just alcohol, like to some degree.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you start chasing, it becomes your new friend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But let me say this just real quick before we close out. I was one of those guys. I came back and I realized, and I was doing my integration, all that, giving it to God and everything else, and I was feeling great. But I started, because I had to come off of all my medications to go do ibogaine. I started getting the short fuse again. And I started, and I was having a horrible time with my wife in the month of January. And so she convinced me to get back on my citalopram and propranolol. But my neurologist put me on for my brain, not my PTSD, but for my brain. And which helped PTSD also at the time. But it wasn't curing it. It wasn't holding it back. Even behavioral cognitive therapy was good, but it wasn't holding it back. Now, after doing the ibogaine, I got my integration process. I got back on my citalopram and Panadol. I'm doing awesome now. So I'm treating the brain. The ibogaine treated the psychological aspect of it, treated space, filed things away properly. And now I'm doing my integration to keep it going and so that I can continue to grow. And since then, I have started a publishing company. I have started on another, but I actually wrote a spiritual autobiography called Resiliency to be coming out. I have another Army Ranger that has a book called Forced to Fight that he wrote, and we're just finishing up the final editing on that. And he's allowed me to publish it with my publishing company. That's going to be coming out hopefully by Labor Day, if not sooner than that. Jits Publishing is my publishing company. It's up and running. It's jitspublishing.com. The website is a work in progress still, but it gives you a good gist of what we're doing. I have linked up since then, since I began, with the CEO of Autobiographer. I'm going to be doing some incredible things for fallen officers' families and Gold Star families. With that, he's a Special Forces major that got out, West Point graduate, and he and I are partnering up to provide some incredible nonprofit stuff through his Autobiographer app and my publishing company. I also established the Jits Pack, which I had the prototype already made and getting ready to do the production on that. That's a new EDC pack I got coming out with a nice little surprise to it. And man, I'm going 100 mile an hour. I started on a screenplay and going to be working on that. I also am writing a autobiography or a biography about my family, where we got a bunch of Rangers going all the way back to the Revolutionary War, with Francis Marion and Samuel Brady, and so I'm going to be doing a biography of Rangers history in my family. Man, I'm going 100 mile an hour, and I couldn't do any of this before I did Ibogaine for 8 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I feel blessed. I feel blessed to be on this podcast, and be able to talk about this. And I know I'm a little bold about my Christianity on it, but you know what? It works. It works for me. It'll work for others out there that are seeking it. And if you're not seeking it, I'm talking to the audience. If you're not seeking it, you don't want to go down that path. At least you have the knowledge now, and you just, just go ahead and figure out what works for you.
I know you got to go, but there is research about prayer and spiritual practices. Dr. Andrew Newberg, Dr. Kurt Thompson, some are Christian only, some they do brain scans of people doing different types of prayer, even from other religious traditions, and it does help heal the brain. So yes. Whatever people's beliefs are out there, prayer and meditation and other things can be tremendously helpful. And it's not just Albert's testimony, which I honor and I'm flattered to hear. Like, there's science behind prayer and spiritual practice that can heal the brain and actually kind of change our heart too. If you look up the company Heart Math, and that goes into HRV and other science that is showing all these things that have been around for hundreds or thousands of years. More and more sharing your story with a brother, post-traumatic growth, paying attention to your breath work and praying improves your HRV. That's going to improve your hormones. And these things help your brain. So there's also science out there. So even if somebody's listening, like, I don't want to hear that right now, because I do know a lot of veterans and first responders that were raised Christian, then something bad happened to them. Mm-hmm. They were traumatized. They met a hypocrite, and it turned them away from organized religion, but they still are seeking and probably believe in a God. I know more cops, firefighters, and vets that believe in God because they've been around life and death things, but they haven't found a spiritual home, especially if it's a church that's waving the BLM flag during the riots or something. So I would encourage them not to give up hope with whatever their beliefs may be spiritually, and to keep seeking, because there may be resources out there. And the psychedelics do bring a lot of people back to wanting to go to church, but then they have a hard time finding church. Because when you have a powerful experience of unconditional love that maybe you didn't get from your mother and father, and then you get it on the medicine and a connection with nature and other human beings, you're like, wow, that was powerful. And I believe now, based on experience, not somebody telling me I'm going to burn in hell and to get to heaven, I follow these rules of morality. Again, these are all long conversations, but I've been so honored that you pulled me on here with somebody as badass as Albert, because I don't have his background whatsoever. And it was so great to hear his story. You're a badass.
I wouldn't say I'm badass, man. Okay, brother.
Just as we're coming up to the end of the time here, Matt, and I'm going to come back to you real quick, Albert, but Matt, where can people follow you and find your work?
My website, tacticalchaplain.com. I need to do a different one that's broader because people out there, please know I have a background in many other things, not just theology and spirituality. And to me, it's all integrated: the fitness, the nutrition, sleep, self-regulation. This is all integrated into our spirituality. On Instagram, Thin Blue Line Spirituality. Thin Blue Line Spirituality is my main one. Backup is the Tactical Chaplain. And also Matt Domyancic on LinkedIn. And that's where me and Albert chatted a whole ton there. So those are different ways to get in touch with me.
And for you, Albert?
I was going to say that like nutrition, sleep's very important. You got to get your sleep. You got to get your sleep plan down. You got to get your nutrition plan down. I couldn't exercise for 8 years because my head would blow up. After I began, now I can exercise. My head still blows up. And they give me medication for it. You know, there's these pills and they give the NFL so that they can work out without their head blowing up when they have, you know, possible CTE and whatnot injuries. And endomethacin, and I'm taking that endomethacin for my workouts, and it helps. You know, I have another pill when my head blows up. I can take it and it helps my headache, brings it back down. But this is all related to concussions, low-level explosives, high explosives, repetitive head impact, things like that, non-concussive and concussive. We can talk about that on a whole nother episode. I can do a whole episode on that.
Albert, just for you, so it was jitspublishing.com. You said there's a new website coming up?
No, that's a new website. We're in the process. It's a innovative publishing company that I've established that is powered by a company called Terminus Management Solutions, owned by Army Ranger. Actually, the partners in there, 2 Army Rangers and an incredible finance guy. And those Army Rangers have a background in finance, and the other one has a background in nuclear and electrical engineering and computer programming. And so when you go to the website, once we got everything completely up and running here pretty soon, you'll be able to get a regular understanding of what we're doing with this new innovative publishing.
I'll get a few links from you whenever that is up and live, and I'll be sure to push that out. Also, you're on LinkedIn. Matt, you do a bit on LinkedIn as well. So I'll get all those social media posts up. We're just at the end of our time here. I want to say, I hope people, the biggest thing to take from this episode is know that there are options out there, but there's also no easy single solution. There's got to be a follow through. There is work to be done. But there are people out there that know what they're doing and can help you do that. These are 2 of the guys that are some of the most selfless people that are putting stuff out there and help. And also I hope people look to reach out to them, to get in contact. I want to say thanks for being on the show today, Matt and Albert. It's always a pleasure, and we'll definitely have you guys on again.
Yeah, we'll put a link to my book down there too, Black Sheep Ghost, Life Making of a Special Agent, the early years, first 18 years of my life. And it's basically, failure is a stone that success can be built upon.
Great stuff. Thank you guys for being here today.
Thank you so much, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nathan.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening in and following along with the discussions. Be sure to click the follow or subscribe button on your respective listening platform. Also, check out the Quiet Professional on X and Instagram under TQP780. And most importantly, please share where you can. Everyone has a part to play in getting these education and information pieces out there. So pass it along. Thanks again.